Okay, today I just wanted to sit with myself and some objects to kind of pause in the midst of a big flow that I'm in around 3D objects. So I kind of walked around my studio and took down things that are hanging on the clothesline. And just in that process of gathering, I got to go on a mini journey. So I'm going to go slow down and go through each of them and hopefully discover a story for myself. And thanks for listening in. This is technically the first closed object that's not clothing or, something like a bag or jacket or something that I've ever made. And also it's hand sewn. And this I followed the instructions that Zach Foster has in one of his YouTube videos. And these are all scraps that I found in my parents' closet. This is an old pair of pants that are size 2T. So someone's baby pants. And then this is a piece of hand-dyed silk that a friend gave me that was a scarf. And at first I made it without these scars, so it was like an intact quilt, and I liked it okay. I particularly liked the blending of these unexpected colors of purple, red, and blue. And as I looked at it, it needed something else, and when I was sitting with it, I realized I wanted to cut into it. So I cut these gashes and then I re-sewed them. And there was something I had to patch this because I had accidentally cut that anyway. So that was already there before, and I kind of just went with it. And then I left these dangling threads. And so I remember that moment of delight and discovery when I said, wow, that is something that's more me. And I just let that, I let myself notice that and let that be there. So I would say that was probably in September sometime of this year, maybe. I'll have to look back. But today's November 15th, so that was maybe a couple months ago. And I thought I wanted to continue this idea. So I think the next thing I made was this, a bigger quilt. Again, all hand sewn pieces of scraps. And these are newer fabrics. I think, yes, all of these are ones that I've bought somewhere. These were bought from Scrap SF, so they're upcycled in some way, and the rest of these are just store-bought. Fabrics, I liked this kind of autumn earth tone color scheme. I liked finding out that I could twist my own yarn to make a tie, and I liked the square, and I liked this process of just discovering how to piece things in a different pattern. It's more like a traditional quilt. And I hadn't cut into this yet. I also, used this big field in the back, which I enjoy. So I haven't cut into this. Somehow it's okay right now as it is, but I may cut into it. That was the second thing I made. And then I've also been a follower of Ann Wood, whose stitch book I'm currently on the last page of. Somehow I'm not working as quickly to finish that as I thought I might, because I've been really, really carried away by this stuff. But Ann Wood also has a lot of different 3D stuffed objects that I've never tried to make before. And she has a link to other free patterns on the internet. And that's where I found this from, I think, an Italian woman living in Japan who writes a sewing blog. But it was this pattern for a tetrahedron. And I never knew how to make one, and it's just literally a rectangle of fabric sewn with two different seam directions. But in this one, it was very exciting to discover. First of all, I put this little hang tag on, supposedly wrong, because it's supposed to go on the end so that it hangs this way. But since I put it in the middle, it hangs this way, and I actually really like this shape. And then I stitched this heart on there because it sort of looked like a heart to me. And then I left this long thread, which I loved. And it sort of now reminds me of these. But this was, you know, these were weeks apart, and I didn't really plan to do this. I actually planned to try to finish traditional embroidered heart, but then I really love the dangling red thread. The second, so I know I wanted to make smaller ones of these. And so the second one I made was this, which is, I think, a third of the dimension. I wrote this down somewhere. This was, I think, 2.5 inches by 5 inches. And this is 1.5 by 3 or 1 by 2 or something. I think this is 1 by 2. So this is a tiny little tetrahedron, and I have the hang tag on the corner, so it hangs like a little triangle. And then I had this, when I left the thread, it kind of curved, so it almost looks like a little pumpkin with a little vine. So those two were next. And then I kind of wanted to do a vegetable. So this pattern I made myself. Launching off from the sphere templates that Ann Wood provides, like, what is the shape of a 3-part sphere? And I just kind of elongated it to make a carrot to see what that would look like. And then I made this hang tag with twine and hemp cord, and then some loose embroidery threads to represent the carrot leaves. And so that was delightful. I really like this fabric that I got. And so the next 3D object I made was this. This was an attempt at a sphere, the 3-part sphere template. And when it came out, it had more of a nose to me. It didn't look like a sphere, so I just went with it and I started making it into a face. I left some dangling threads, and then I started to explore how I might make hair if it really was this character. So it has all of this hair, and it has 2 different personalities. And I like this. I really liked all the discoveries of using different types of threads and how to get the hair on there, and what a face might look like. So now I'm looking at this. It's been maybe a month since I've made this, and yeah, it's I still like it. And I've also really I feel like I've become more confident in my ways of exploring stitch because I've done more now. But I really loved, these are fabric upholstery samples that I got from Fabmo in Sunnyvale. The next object, this is, Ann Wood has this pattern, and I made this chicken first. This pattern is a hanging ornament. This is directly from Ann Wood's pattern, the felt, the X for the eyes, the stitching, not the dangling loose threads, which I like to try incorporating into all my pieces. But I wanted a chicken that would stand up on its own, like with a box bottom. And I couldn't actually find one online that had the shape that I wanted, so I just tried making my own. And that's what this is. This hen, which I did incorporate the Ann Wood stitching here. I added a little heart on each side, which I hadn't remembered till now. And then from the heart, that's that hanging thread motif, I added these book page text eggs. They're painted. And so when she's hanging or being held up, these eggs dangle. But then when she sits down, she can sit with her eggs around her. So this is just a concept. It's really not like highly developed. It was a first try, but I like this idea of having a hen sit with these dangling eggs around her. And then if you could pick up the hen and they hang. So they could be fabric next time. I like the text. I wanted to try text, like explore ways that I can use text with fabric, paper and fabric, you know, all these ideas. So that was my first try. Those are my 2 hens so far. And I thought I would want to make a whole group of hens, but actually where I went next was hearts. And these are all my own patterns. Which one was next? I think these 2 hearts are what I made next. And then I sort of also made this. All of these sort of happened within a 2-day span. I just wanted to do a lot. I had this really, I was just driven. So these do 2 different heart shapes I made with more upholstery patterns. I wrote a note to myself I wanted to embellish this with red thread. But these are like a crushed velvet and then different types of woven and velvet. I really like this one. Upholstery. And I haven't done any embellishing or put any hang tags. I was just experimenting with this dimensions, and I decided I really like this size and shape of kind of a skewed heart. And then I went and tried the 4-part sphere from Ann Wood template, and I really liked it. And then I realized I could use wire as a core underneath this twisted yarn. So this has not been embellished either, but it's, again, those Fabmo upholstery samples. So here I'm getting better at my stitching and cutting and seam lines and everything. And then this shape was, I'm just playing with different shapes. Like I want to do circles, teardrops, different. So this was like a semicircle attempt, and this probably it came before this one. So you can see that it's not as confident in the stitching, but it almost came out looking like a chicken. But now I turned it into, it sat for, you know, a couple weeks, and then I started to add the patching, and then I added the beads, more dangling threads, and then this woven piece, which I just love this, the tassel on this one and the hang. So this is the one that I really, really love, just seeing hanging on my clothesline. At the same time, I had cut out, I had made my own pattern for this little kitty. Doesn't quite stand up, so I haven't figured out how to do a box bottom yet, but this is just sort of a little stuffed animal. I left the tail a little bit floppy. I stitched the ears, the face. I haven't done whiskers yet. The little tail stripes. I added this little tummy, which I love because I love to rub my cat's tummies. A little bit of stitch on the back. Like this looked to me like a night sky or the ocean, but I just love the idea of putting little celestial symbols in there. And then I just noticed this little heart that I put in, and then this long string that we don't know what that'll become, but maybe it'll be attached to a ball of yarn, a little ball of yarn for this cat to play with. Anyway, I know I'll do more with cats. I have a pattern that I've made already for a sleeping rolled up cat, the laying down cat, but I just haven't identified the fabric for that or really settled on the size, but she is done. And you could see that, you know, everything is I like how this turned out in terms of the stuffing and the choice of fabric. This is actually a muslin that I then painted with Inktense pencils and stamped with a hand-carved stamp. So that fabric is made by me, and this is a store-bought fabric, batik fabric. So then I went on to, yes, this was next, this heart. So it has the wire core. This is this This is a wedding dress that I found at an estate sale that I dyed with eucalyptus. And this is a kale dyed store-bought fabric. So this was originally a white background. And so I love the color scheme. I just love the color scheme of this original fabric, the dark and the light green, and then these deep reds and pinks. So something that kind of worked with everything here. I then stamped with ink some text on a piece of scrap fabric with a frayed edge that I loved. It was just perfectly frayed. And just stitched that down and then added this little bow of yarn. I sewed that down and left a long tail. This I added later, so it's not as secure as other ones, and I might have to wrap that again with some more thread. But I love this, and I love the danglies and this little geometric bead. And just everything about this is really a direction that I'm now going in. Now as I look at this, this was made within the last week, and I've already kind of created a whole series of other ideas I want to do with hearts based just on this. So this is the more symmetrical design, similar to that. I don't know if it's exactly the same. I think it's a little bigger, but the symmetrical heart. And then I went on to, this is an Ann Wood pattern of a fish. And I love that this tail flaps like a fish might swim. And then I added, this is just loose yarn wound around here, so it can be taken off. But it kind of reminded me both of fishing, like a fish caught in a net, and just kind of the stripes on a fish. So I beadwork, scraps, lots of loose frayed edges that suggest to me like movement in the water. And also to me it evokes like the struggle of our oceans, you know, and how our marine life is really just like trying to make it through all the stuff we've put in the ocean. And this little eye with the wire was a new discovery on this one. I love that they're different. They have like two different characters. So that's sort of an outgrowth of that idea, that there's two, when you have three-dimensional objects, there can be two characters in one. Also with this. Then I wanted to go a little bit bigger to see what that would be like. So this is a very recent one finished it yesterday. A bigger angelfish. I thought, you know, the thing that this doesn't have is fins. So I added some felt fins, these wire eyes. These are all salvaged fabrics. These from my childhood home. This from a bandana that I got from volunteering at Yosemite. So I just love the feel of that. And then this side is a childhood fabric that I wanted to have more patchwork on. So I just finished doing all that stitching yesterday. And I do like how that turned out with the stripes. And he hangs. So, yes, the discoveries here were these big fish eyes that I like, and just hand piecing fabric to make a single side. That was new. And so I did get more adept at this hand piecing, which I did learn from Jude Hill videos. And then this was one that I just made yesterday. This is my latest treasure and love, which is hand-pieced upholstery samples from Fabmo. This is also, but this is a single piece. And then stamped text on fabric scraps, and I love the frayed edges. I made this frayed edge from a Jude Hill ragged edge applique technique. But one side says yes, the other side says no, K-N-O-W. And that was inspired by a conversation I had with a friend over the weekend that really brought that up. And so this long tail, I'm loving this color scheme of the turquoise and the dark brown. I've loved that I had this ceramic bead with these colors and this yarn, which I wound with embroidery floss, and kind of just loving everything about it, the dimension of it. So this is the same pattern as this heart here, surprisingly. And I love the proportion of the length of this top hang tag versus how long this tail is, and the weight of the bead. The skewed angle of the text. And I just really, really love this piece of fabric that has so much ripped edge on it, and how it kind of contrasts with the certainty of the word no. So I love what that evokes. That we want to have our certainty, but it always has some frayed edges. So from there, that was yesterday, a lot of excitement. It took me 2 hours from beginning to end probably to do that. But of course it really took, all this time, all of the time of learning that I've just talked about. This I just made this morning. I didn't look at the clock, so I don't know how long it took me, but it's that same pattern with this fabric again, but a different back. And I chose a piece with a hole in it already, which I'm gonna kind of roughly stitch over so it's still visible. And I purposely sometimes make the closures visible too, and I'm playing with, leaving this. I don't know if this will stay, but I know this will have danglies. I'm playing with a longer length of a hang tag for these size hearts. And here's my next stack of already cut fabrics that I want to do next for hearts. So these are all ready to go, and that's something new for me, to do like a whole stack. This kind of makes me excited that I can just come in the studio and start working on something when I'm ready. So that's kind of why I came in this morning and just did this. The thing I started that was new was tying this above and leaving it outside the seam, so that I'm only enclosing the tails. In these other pieces, I've either started from the outside afterwards or enclosed that little knot inside the seam. So what do I want to say? That was, well, it was interesting to note, like, from this first object here, or you could say this is the first stuffed object, and then this would be the first closed, non-stuffed object. How many themes are continuing, how it's evolved from, these dangling threads in the cut imperfect beauty here, to this dangling thread from a heart, to this, the most recent version of that. And this, I would say these two things are very closely related. So these four are very showing an evolution. And I'm really having, so this, how is this different from my collage and anything goes notebook practice with paint and papers and inks? And one is just the setup of getting started in the studio, the cleanup, the space preparation. It's just different, so the inertia to start feels different. I still love paper collage with paint and liquid media and how that feels. And I love at the end of a process to have an object that I can really handle and also wear. I've been putting these on, I guess I should show these. I chose not to include in this video a discussion of this process, which is spinning my own art yarn cord using the Sewn weaving art yarn maker. So this is the latest one of these, which I also love. And so this one has a wire cord, it has some beads on it. And you can see I have some, actually, so these were missing from my discussion. These two little objects, another tetrahedron with a fabric upholstery sample. And this heart, oh my gosh, this needs to be discussed. So this heart was pivotal. It was before this one, but it was childhood salvaged fabrics, similar fabrics to this actually. And at the end, oh, so I was actually wanting to play with the image of a heart that's like bound, tied down like Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels, right? Like how he gets tied down by these miniature people. And as I was as I finished this, it was a lot like this where, oh yeah, that's fine. But then I laid down some threads across it just to try to see what it would look like. And then I just started winding it around. And then so I took all of these little scraps of thread I had and I just started winding it around. And then I stitched over it and left knots and dangling threads. And I've worn this out as sort of a scarf or necklace several times since then. So I noticed some of them are unwinding. It's just evolving in a different way. So these two objects need to be included here in this pile. Can you see all that? Yeah. I've put a white background here just so it's easier to see, but I do not work on a white background. So this is where things are going right now, and it's good for me to look at this like this. Right now they're hanging on a clothesline in front of, above, across my work tables, across two sides of my studio. So I get to see them every time I walk in, and they're sort of surrounding me, and I love looking at these hanging hearts and this hanging object, and I love wearing my art cords. I haven't looked at the art cord next to these objects before, which is interesting. And this all started, I think, with this idea that I wanted to try to find a way to create fabric charms that I could put along a cord like this to represent a story and a progression and a, events, moments, feelings, encounters. And so that's what I wanted to teach myself. And I was trying to find out for myself how big these objects had to be to sit on this line in a way that I liked. And this was sort of the size. This is sort of the perfect size. And now it's evolved into these objects that could go on here too. Probably not as a worn piece of like jewelry or fashion, but as a storyline, if this were drawn across a room or something, it could be. So that's just a thought out loud that I'm sharing with you, that is kind of the long-term driving vision that I had for starting any of this, because I'm not really interested in making quilts. I'm not interested in, making pieces of jewelry per se, but it is fun to be able to wear things that I've made. And so I've really just been trying to teach myself something without having a goal for selling it or doing anything with it, other than this idea of story charms and having them be three-dimensional fabric objects that hold tactile meaning and a feeling, and maybe some text. So I've started with the text. I'm on a roll with the text right now, and I have a lot of ideas for this pile of hearts over here, what I'm going to do with the text. So that's where I am today. And this was a fun little journey from here to here and here. So thanks for listening.